My community looks like it's mostly Native American folks. So I came here from Arizona, and so a lot of the people I met here or became friends with are from the Ojibwe Nation or Dakota. So yes, and then during college, I did meet a handful of other Navajo individuals too. So that's what my community looks like, and a lot of it was in higher education because I went to school here in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. The way in which I show up in my community here in Minneapolis is just staying connected with as many Native folks as I can from when they arrive to, how we're thriving and living and making a life here in Minnesota. I think that's the only thing I would really want to change is just how engaged or integrated I would be. So that's what I would really like to see. Mm-hmm. So pride means a lot of different things for me. When I was first, establishing my identity, my journey started off with being a gay person, and then after that, it became a trans individual. And I was in my transition journey for about 7 years before I got to where I am now. And so along that, pride kind of changed over time for me. At first, pride was like rainbows and glitter and butterflies and like the parade in the park, things like that. And kind of just learning how to be proud and loud and boisterous and, being energetic and just like kind of throwing it in people's faces type of thing. And then with time, kind of understanding who I am as an individual, pride really started to mean like my community, the people I care for, the people who have camaraderie and they have the same sense of journey that I have. We're navigating the same systems together, whether that's healthcare, education, so human services, and all the interactions that we're having with kind of like mainstream society, how they're dealing with us. I guess it's not really like they get a choice, but we kind of demand healthcare, we demand the right to take up spaces, and so that's kind of how pride has shifted for me. And then as living as a trans woman, pride for me is just really being able to live authentically as myself and being able to just dream a better future for the young people. And I think one thing I really want young people to know is that this journey can often seem lonely and alone, but with pride and having a community and a family there with you, oftentimes that helps kind of like your growth and your courage and your confidence just to be who you are. And so that's kind of how it is for me. Mm-hmm. So what does it mean to be included? I think for me, there was a lot of spaces I wasn't included, not only because I'm Navajo, but also because I was either gay and eventually trans. So my voice, I feel like as a minority of a minority of a minority, often just is unheard, often erased, or becomes invisible. And I think being able to be taking up space is pretty powerful. And so when it comes to inclusion, I always think about people who are sort of living at those intersections, because oftentimes they're either in a dichotomy, you're either this or you're that, and no one really talks about how the intersection creates such a unique molding of those type of experiences. And so having that just sort of makes me excited to see like there's so many perspectives coming together. I want you to share that. And so that's why I feel like that's what inclusion is. And for me, when I'm including other folks, like I said, I try to find those people with like really cool intersections, because pride is not all about just the letters, the LGBTQ plus and many other sorts of terminology around gender or sexuality. So I feel like for me, including others is just really being able to identify folks who I feel like you can get a strong sense like they're ready to tell their story, or at least not really like coax them out, but be like, hey, we created a safe space for you to actually do this. So yes, that's how I help make sure people are included. Well, I think they impact a lot, and I think they don't get the credit they should have. There's a lot of things that have sparked historically that started with BIPOC trans individuals, and also a lot of the earlier movements that kind of provide the rights and the privileges and kind of the power people have today started off the backs of BIPOC folks and other individuals who really had to like be emblazoned and emboldened and like just trailblaze for us, right? And so sometimes I often think about my ancestors and how impactful they have been in being able to sort of sit on a foundation and look back and be proud that I'm able to exist the way I am in public and in the spaces I am. I'm able to be employed, get good health care because of folks who didn't have that and were able to push through that for me. That's the impact I believe that BIPOC or LGBTQ people, like the intersection of that, create or provide. What have I learned? I feel like I learned that they're like my brothers and sisters. I learned that some can be mothering, fathering. I've learned that some can be confidants. Some can be really cool people that inspire you, motivate you, really help you be creative. Obviously, we have just a very visual representation of who we are in the media, and oftentimes probably, too focused on like drag queen shows and a lot of different things like that, but also knowing like that's a part of our identity in a way, but also at the same time, knowing that, I can learn from my brothers and sisters, my family, because they have sort of experienced the same thing I have, and that's something I wouldn't give up. So I feel like, without having to toot my own horn, because I hate doing that, I feel like I am always advocating for safer spaces, spaces that really reflect the community that I wish I was in and can be a part of, and visibly engaging in and being a part of a process or a contribution, right? And so that's something I know I'm able to do naturally. I think the other thing that I contribute is basically connecting community members, connecting folks with one another, and I like to do that authentically and genuinely, because I think relationship building is so foundational just to being human, right? And like being able to talk together, be in the same space with each other, being able to touch, hug, things like that. Those are what makes us human. Those are the things that connect us and bind us stronger and, really strengthen our bonds as people in the LGBTQ BIPOC community. And so that's one way I definitely contribute. And the other way, is just sharing my story. Like I said, I have a podcast, and on that, I really talk about what it was like growing up in a really small community in Arizona and sort of being the only one different from everybody. And then with time, having the courage to sort of talk about all the treatment I received when I was younger, and then all the different identity development experiences I had along the way, and then where I am now, right? It's like, I think about my journey walking in trans beauty as not trying to survive, but I'm thriving, and I'm able to live day to day and have an outlook where I have options, I have a choice, and I don't have to fear for my life much any day. Although the political landscape, right, it tends to shake those things up sometimes. But I believe that there's already too many of us out that they can't just push us back in. And they can't just tell us to be closeted again, or that we don't exist, or discover other ways that they can use mental health sort of diagnoses to treat us differently. And, at the end of the day, that's what I truly believe in, is that, yes. Thriving for me is just living, being able to have awesome friends and family who are there to, support you, to listen to you, people who aren't there constantly trying to mold you and shape you into something you're obviously not going to be, but being able to challenge you and say, hey, what are you going to do today? How are you growing today? How are you contributing today, right? How are you furthering the advocacy of young youth, getting the care they need, being able to share the voices that they have, all these different things. Like, I feel like that's thriving for me. And some of the different ways that I feel like I'm thriving too is being able to really invest my time in media making. And so learning how to use a camera or the recording devices just to be able to record my voice or even my likeness and share it to the world and say, hey, take it or leave it, but I hope my story aligns with you in a way that helps you maybe think about what you're going through as an individual, but also how you could probably step in and advocate and, you know, be courageous and support someone through their journey too, without too much bias or without too much prejudice, and also discrimination along the way too. And how do you like alleviate the tension and the conflict and the barriers while pushing their interests forward?